Chichén Itza is one of the most visited archaeological sites in the entire world, and no trip to the Yucatán Peninsula is truly complete without checking it out. But there are plenty of things that can go wrong during your visit. You may overpay for tickets or crafts. You could even get kicked out, scammed, or even worse. Tip number 1, beat the crowds. I know that if you're coming from Merida, the Riviera Maya, or Cancun, getting up really early to get to Chichén Itza is kind of a pain in the ass, but believe me, it's really worth it. The site opens at 8 o'clock in the morning, and if you're there after 8, well, really by this point, you're too late. Vendors have already started setting up, and things can get pretty hairy. If you get there after 8 o'clock, say around 10 or 11, then you'll start seeing tons of tourism buses just roll in, bringing in hordes and hordes of tourists. It really detracts from the experience, and it also robs you of the opportunity to being able to see a lot of the wildlife that exists here in the Yucatán Peninsula. I can't stress this enough. Get there early. Tip number 2, dealing with vendors. Now, it's not nice to generalize, but some vendors at Chichén Itza can be quite aggressive. One thing that you see very commonly is that they'll be flagging people down saying $1, $1. Then you get there, you take the thing, and they're like, oh, it's $1 to look. And now you have it in your hands, and they start to strong arm you into buying whatever it is at quite an inflated cost. Also, a lot of these products that you may find are not really what you could call maybe authentic, right? A lot of them are imported from China. Some of them are made with plaster from cheap molds, also sometimes resin. So what I recommend is finding a vendor who you can see whittling away at the craft that you want to buy, this giving you, well, a much better chance of picking up something that is really authentic, one of a kind, and you'll treasure for years on end and not just keep at the bottom of a drawer, right? Another thing to keep in mind is that haggling is expected, but only to a certain point. Remember, this is the way that a lot of people make a living, so you don't want to be, being a jerk about it. Also, another thing is please, don't be one of these people that buys a Steelers or Broncos poncho. It is the tackiest, and us locals, we just hate it. Step number 3, finding the right guide. Having a guide when visiting Chichén Itza can be a really great experience. Unless you're really already very knowledgeable of the site, or even if you are, access to a guide can really bring a lot to the experience of visiting this ancient wonder. But not all guides are made equal. In Mexico, you have to be an official guide licensed by the state to be working at an archaeological site like Chichén Itza. That being said, not everybody is. You might think to yourself, well, what's the big deal whether my guide is licensed or not? Well, the thing is a lot of the unlicensed guides don't really know their stuff. They make up random stuff, talk about UFOs, throw in a bunch of info that is just purely not correct, and really will make you come away with an impression of the site that isn't really quite accurate. So I really recommend that. But of course, I would say that since I'm a third generation guide, as both my father and grandfather worked at Chichén Itza as well. Another thing to keep in mind is that Chichén Itza is really huge and takes at the very least 2.5 hours to visit. So a lot of these guides will offer you what they call express tours that take about an hour. This is really not enough, and you're really going to be missing out on, well, a lot of the best stuff that Chichén Itza has to offer. So really, you're looking at least 2.5 hours to really get away with the full experience. Tip number 4. Getting your tickets. I strongly recommend against getting your tickets beforehand. You should really be buying them at the site itself. Why? Well, there's a lot of unscrupulous people out there that'll be selling you tickets that are just plain fake. Then when you get to the site, you'll be turned away and forced to buy tickets all over again. This is a real pain in the ass, and the best way to avoid it is to just buy your ticket when you get there. The lines can get really long, but they typically move pretty fast, so that shouldn't be too bad, unless you arrived after noon, in which case, well, buddy, you might as well just come back the next day. There's also even further scams that involve the selling of tickets for hot air balloon rides that don't even exist. So then you'll have people showing up at the site with their ticket in hand for their hot air balloon ride, and, well, yeah, you're out of luck. The same applies to the video mapping show in the evenings called Noches de Cuculcán. Buy that right at the site. Now, another thing that happens, it doesn't happen too often, but it does happen, is that sometimes the security guards at the site will be walking around asking people for the stubs for their ticket. If you don't have the stub for your ticket when they ask you for it, they will kick you out of the site or make you pay again. So this is something you really want to avoid. Make sure you keep that stub in your ticket and don't lose track of it. Tip 6, what not to bring. So if you go to Chichén Itza, don't even think about bringing a drone, professional camera equipment, a big old tripod, booze, or anything like that. They will check your bag before you enter, and they will make you check it into a locker, and that's at your own expense. So really avoid bringing drones, booze, speakers, or anything that might, annoy the authorities. Now, if you are really obnoxious and insist on bringing your drone into the site, you will get caught. There's security guards all over the place, and believe me, it's not a good idea. You don't want to be spending a night in a Mexican prison or having to pay a fine that will be at least thousands of dollars. So I understand the temptation, but just stay away. Keep your drone at home. Tip 7, creepy crawlies and Chichén Itza's dogs. So, much like the rest of Mexico, there's stray dogs everywhere, and Chichén Itza is no exception. They're kind of cute, you see them climbing the pyramids, it's really nice, but you should really not be feeding them. If you are caught feeding them, you can get in trouble with the authorities, and they might even kick you out. So, I know it's tempting, everybody loves pups, but refrain from doing this. Another thing to keep in mind is that there's a lot of creepy crawlies in the jungle around Chichén Itza. And I know from my own experience that sometimes I run off chasing birds, but always be mindful of where you are. Don't wear sandals, and remember, there's snakes out there and all kinds of other insects. So protect yourself, don't be a dummy. Tip number 8, don't climb the pyramids. I understand the temptation, they're super cool, you want to get up there. Sometimes you think, there's not that many people around, nobody's looking. People are looking, and you will get caught. Climbing the pyramid in Chichén Itza is something that happens from time to time. People go up, they get arrested, it's a big to-do, it's something you don't want to be involved with. If you really want to be climbing pyramids, you should be checking out other archaeological sites in Mexico, like Itzá, Calakmul, places where this is okay. But it's really not worth doing, it's a very bad idea, and if we're getting technical about it, even a federal crime. So just avoid it altogether. Now, if climbing the pyramids is a bad idea, going into the cenotes at Chichén Itza is an even worse idea. They are very steep, hard to get in and out of, and if you get in there, you will get stuck. That doesn't seem like a very logical thing to do, but believe me, every year, some idiot will jump into those cenotes, get himself stuck, the Marines come, have to bring him out with a helicopter, and it's a whole to-do. It's a good way to make the newspaper here, if that's what you really want, but not worth it. Tip number 9, parking. If you get to Chichén Itza later in the day, it's very unlikely that you're going to find a parking spot within Chichén Itza's official parking lot. This is where your car is really the safest. Some people choose to park on the side of the highway. This is really dangerous as your car might be vandalized, might get towed. It's just not a good idea. Your second best choice is that there's several lots around the site that function as kind of, extra official parking lots where you pay a fee and they let you leave your car. They're more expensive than the official parking lot, not as secure, but definitely better than leaving your car on the highway. Again, this is another reason to get to the site good and early. Tip number 10, stay hydrated. As we were talking about before, Chichén Itza is a very large site and takes at least 2 hours to explore. This is the Yucatán Peninsula, and temperatures routinely go above 40 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So you really want to make sure you're staying hydrated and drinking water pretty much the entire time. Well, now that we got that out of the way, just make sure to enjoy Chichén Itza. It really is a spectacular place, and I'm sure you're really going to enjoy it. I myself have been there well over 100 times, and every time I go, there's something new to discover, encounter, or explore. So really, make sure you enjoy yourself. Also, please don't forget to send us your comments about your experience there, about the video, and most importantly, don't forget to like and subscribe to Yucatán Magazine. Thank you very much. That's all for now. See you next time.